As they say, sometimes you save the best for last. That's how I feel about one of our speakers who's going to present right now. His name is Michael Gough. Michael is with the website internetvisitation.net, and he provides a service for visitation between parents in high conflict divorce, which is extremely important and unique thanks to the technology that's available today. I also happen to believe that his service could provide additional litigation support in the sense that if somebody needs assistance in counseling services, somebody needs to see an expert from out of state, this is a technology that could be useful in that way. So I'd like to explain that Michael is going to be doing his presentation through an audio feed from Texas. However, his PowerPoint is going to be on the screen, so please welcome from Texas, the great state of Texas, Michael Gough.
Hello, everybody. I'd like to first start off with a little item you can help me out with, since I can't have a show of hands and see how many people raise their hands. I would like it if you could give me a baseline. If I can get everyone to clap really loudly, then when I ask a question of the audience, for example, how many people here have or do XYZ, you can clap, and then I'll have an idea how much of that audience is involved.
Michael, also I just want to mention from the podium that if anybody during your presentation has a question and would like me to ask Michael to just pause for a question, I'm going to walk around with a live microphone so Michael can hear you.
Yeah, feel free at any point, if you feel I left something out of a topic, to go ahead and raise your hand and interrupt me. We don't have to wait till the end of the questions. If you want to hold your question and it's easy to remember, then go ahead and do so, and we'll answer them all at the end, but I have no problem with interruptions here. So if you could put up slide 2. So again, my name is Michael Gough. I am the principal of internetvisitation.org. The .net site is where you get the Virtual Visitation Handbook. I'll talk more about that in a minute, and I'll explain the differences between the two websites. I am a computer security expert. That's important here because I'm a certified computer security expert. I mean, that's what it means. So I know everything about the privacy issues that you might face. We'll talk about those in a minute. I understand this technology upside down and backwards. I've written a book on it. I understand all the security implications, the things that people might say, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt is I don't understand. Can the person look into my house? All those sorts of things that will come up in these types of cases of parental alienation syndrome or hostile aggressive parenting or even domestic violence and abuse cases. You can reach me at this email address, michael@internetvisitation.org. This presentation is available. It is fairly large because it contains 2 videos. I will send it without the videos or offer a link where you can download the zip file that contains the videos. Slide 3, please. So the purpose of this presentation, as Joe stated, is I got involved with virtual visitation in the course of my divorce and the clear identification of my daughter suffering from a long-distance relationship. And I asked the courts to give me the right to use virtual visitation before there was any case law, state law, or statute. And I want to share this information with you because in your cases, in your area of expertise, I have come to find through working with other psychologists and counselors that this tool really has a place here, and we'll talk a bit more about that. So we're here to provide background information and the tools. We'll talk about that as well, so we make sure you get an understanding what's available there. to assist individuals with parental alienation syndrome or hostile aggressive parenting cases and others in advocating virtual visitation. So my goal here is to get you to understand the concept, understand what it is, why it possibly is a good thing, how easy it is to do, so that you can help your clients and people involved in your daily lives or businesses. And, of course, it is mainly for the children of divorce, custody cases, also helping incarceration. I'll talk about how that's used, and other relevant situations like domestic violence and abuse and high-conflict relationships. And, of course, one of the things I'm going to talk about for you to get is information on virtual visitation so you can hand out to give your clients. Slide 4, please.
More than 35,600 couples got a divorce in North Carolina last year. Children were involved in thousands of those cases. Custody battles are never easy, but sharing custody could soon become a little simpler. Amanda Lamb joins us with more on the idea of virtual visitation. Amanda.
Well, Pam, one of the most difficult things about divorce is children not being able to see one parent. And this is especially true if the child moves out of state with the other parent. But technology is giving these families a tool that may be the next best thing to personal visits.
Wonderful expressions.
Yeah. Most days, Adam Goldenberg can only see his 4-year-old son's expressions in photographs. That's because Goldenberg is divorced from Jeremy's mother, and the child lives with her in New Jersey.
At 4 years old, you go 30, 40 days without a visit, and then you see each other again, and you just hope that when he runs up to you, he knows who you are.
Goldenberg is hoping to use a high-quality webcam to connect with his son more personally. He is negotiating this with Jeremy's mother. Goldenberg says she is concerned about the cost of the camera and the high-speed internet service.
Being able to see him and him see me as we're talking would mean everything.
What's really sad is where one parent wants to do it and the other parent says no, and the child is the loser.
Attorney Lee Rosen says his clients are constantly asking about virtual visitation.
A mom or a dad who doesn't have custody can literally tuck their children into bed at night, and they can read that story one-on-one over the internet. It changes everything in terms of the possibilities for relationships.
Currently, North Carolina judges don't have the legal authority to mandate virtual visitation if both parties don't agree to it. Rosen is lobbying for legislation that would give them that authority. Many judges see it as a positive step.
I think in many cases it would be a good idea. Not only would it give the parent that contact with the child, but it would also give the child the same kind of contact with the parent to be able to see that parent when they're not physically with them.
Now, a web camera can cost anywhere from about $50 to close to $1,000, depending on the quality. High-speed internet service runs about $40 a month. The judges I talked to today say the key is making sure both parents have the financial means to make virtual visitation work. Pam?
All right, Amanda. Amanda Lamb reporting. A virtual visitation bill is in the works in North Carolina. We're one of 5 states working on the legislation, along with Ohio, Illinois, Virginia, and South Carolina. 3 states already have the law, and 6 are considering it.
Okay, so let's talk a bit. There's an error there at the end. The reporter actually misquoted the cost of a webcam, so before everybody in the room freaks out and hears $1,000, that's actually $100. Webcams are very inexpensive. The top-of-the-end Logitech webcams in the United States, for example, run on sale anywhere from $79 U.S. to $129, and that's the best you would possibly need. So that was a typo. Be sure to understand this is a very low-cost solution. Currently, we're actually expected Friday to get the pre-draft bill back from the legislative attorney in North Carolina. So if anybody there in Canada wants to help out legislation and knows anybody, please feel free to contact me. I have worked with a couple individuals there in Toronto. But an interesting point about this news clip is you saw Adam in the beginning, and all the dad had was pictures of the child. Now, this is powerful because this is the position I was in. There's a similar news clip that Salt Lake City did on me, and I worked with the Milwaukee news station as well, where they took a picture in the news clip of the pictures on the wall of my daughter because that is all I had at the time. My ex-wife was one of those that just refused to cooperate. And so I think it's important to understand that even in these parental alienation situations, domestic violence, abuse, etc., This is a tool where we can see and introduce another option so the children can start gaining contact.
Excuse me, Mike?
Yes.
Yeah, we have someone in the audience with a question here.
Okay, shoot.
Hi, Mr. Gough. My name is Martin Gibb. I'm just wondering if you can't do this in this presentation, if you could over email, but you just mentioned you have worked with or are working with two people in Toronto. I'm in the Toronto area. I'd like to connect with those two people. If you can identify them, great. But at some point, I'd like to connect with them for this service.
Great. So go ahead and send me an email for the email at the beginning of the presentation, michael@internetvisitation.org, and I'll put you in touch with the two individuals that I have worked with in the past.
Got another question here, Mike. Just hold on.
Go ahead.
Hi, Mike. It's Chris Shaw here from Kingston, Ontario. I have not a problem with the technology itself, perhaps, but just a problem about how it might get misconstrued in the courts, because one of the things that keeps fathers involved or non-custodial parents involved locally is that you can't have the people move. And some of the judges have been saying, well, you know, you can be an internet father, you can be a father. I would say that I have to be very clear that this is certainly not by any means a substitute for having a father live in the flesh or a non-custodial parent live in the flesh. I'm just worried about the legal aspects of it, how the judges might interpret it.
Okay, I will cover that item. I completely agree with you, and that is a major topic here that I'll be covering. So, good question, and good lead-in, actually, because we're going to be covering that shortly. So, Adam's situation was and is, as most people, much like was just shared with Troy as well, is we go to family court and we have judges in many cases, mine was one of them, that if it's not case law, state law, or statute, they won't order it. They're not going to do cutting-edge divorce law. In a similar case that Troy just talked about, how does a judge deal with move-away cases? That is one of the reasons legislation, why this news clip's on here, is, I believe, to be very important. We have already had cases, which is considered case law once it moves up out of the county courts, that gets documented, that can be referred to within that state or even other states, that use what happens in a case as an example for their case, whatever they're litigating, move-aways being one of them. So it's very important that if we can get legislation passed in the United States, Canada, wherever else, or create case law that has a very good reference to the proper use of virtual visitation, then that can be used to help people like in Canada or anywhere in the United States or the world for that matter, as I've done in the past, to properly guide the courts of how to use it. And I'll talk more about that as we get along. But Adam made a good point, right? So in any case, let's say his was a parental alienation case or a domestic violence case, where the child really is the secondary person. It's the parents that have been involved in doing the bad deeds, and they're the issue. So this gives the opportunity to the professionals in this room that are listening to this presentation right now an option to recommend to the courts. Say, hey, the children can get reintroduced, or because of separation of distance, or even not, doesn't have to be distance, it can be because of the situation, but a child has another option to communicate not just with the non-custodial or secondary parent, the father or the mother, and in 85% of the cases it's obviously the father, but this is a tool, not a remedy, not a solution, just a tool that says, look, we can introduce this child back to this parent's life, whether it's mother or father, it doesn't matter, it works both ways. And this person can see, not just hear the individual like a telephone call. You there have no idea what I look like. You're about to see a news clip with Parental that will show you. You'll see a picture and video of me. But there's a big difference between just listening to me and also being able to see my actual mannerisms and see my scenario. And we can all agree without a doubt this is not a replacement. It is a tool to use to get to the point that in cases, as a good example of parental alienation, the child will get more comfortable with the alienated parent, and at some point in time, the psychologist or the specialist or the counselors and or the courts involved can see this, because one of the nice features about virtual visitation is it can be recorded and become proof to be used in court or with other professionals that are involved to show the children's very comfortable with that individual. It can also be used in supervised visitation cases as well. With that, let's go to slide 5. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what is virtual visitation. So here's the definition. Now, this is what we use in the legislation in the United States. Now, I can tell you that currently in the United States, Utah, the very first state to pass the law, I don't consider that a model state. Utah has a very strange statute compared to how most everyone else does it. It has a lot of details. It's almost a parenting plan in and of itself. Most states are much more generic, and then you have to build a parenting plan. So we look at Wisconsin, Texas, and Florida in the United States as the model states. They all have wording specific, for example, about move-aways. The court cannot use the existence of virtual visitation in the decision to allow or promote a move out of the area or state. This is why legislation is crucial in regards to virtual visitation. It prevents or helps you guide the courts because it's statutory now. It's actually in the statute. It's no longer an argument you have the burden as the requesting parent to prove in that scenario. Now, the reality is that in move cases, the majority of the moves are due to the new spouse's employment. The second is your former spouse is moving because of employment. And the third is to move back where they came from, and then the military falls behind that. So virtual visitation clearly has no quantity here. But we have seen cases in the United States, Clary and Lee cases, Clary versus Clary, Lee versus Lee, where the courts did misuse this. We have case law in the Supreme Court of North Dakota where they made a statement specific that moving away should not be influenced by the existence of virtual visitation. So what we're wanting now to help cure this issue and further, cause more parental alienation by distance is slowly getting adopted. But this is unfortunately how you have to do it. And the fact that there already are laws in the books in the United States can be used in Canada as an example of what the trend is, and that's a real important point. But its definition is any technology you can think of is virtual visitation. So when we write a bill, we say electronic communication is email, video conferencing, instant messaging, wired or wireless. We take care of the internet at home as well as the cell phone and any other technology involved. To supplement, real important, to supplement face-to-face visits, not replace court-ordered phone contacts between a non-custodial parent and a child. So clearly, very clear from that perspective that it's to supplement, that it is for non-face-to-face. So we are working very hard on legislation to make sure it's worded. We've definitely got together with judges, attorneys, and we've worded this to make sure it satisfies everybody. Keep in mind it is called virtual parent time in Utah, but we have genericized it to call it electronic communication. And in the laws, electronic communication is defined, and then it's associated with visitation, or whatever they call it, placement in Wisconsin. The reason for that is now we don't have to modify the bill 1,000 times or the law 1,000 times everywhere the word visitation occurs. It's already been linked in the definition of what visitation is. It's in person, and it's also electronic communication. Slide 7, please.
Can we take a question here, Mike?
Separated from your children by divorce? No
if they can pause the video,
yes.
We have somebody else here with a question. Are you able to take it now, Mike?
Yes.
Okay, here.
Hi, Mike. Thanks so much for what you do, and especially going through what you went through and to turn it into something that's positive to help so many people. In my experience, what I'm seeing a lot is there's a huge focus on semantics sometimes and what words mean, especially to a parent who might be called a secondary parent or a parent who's supposedly visiting. Like, those words really evoke a lot of emotion, and it can also make the child feel a certain way about that parent who they're not spending a majority of the time with. I like that you addressed in the Utah bill that it said virtual parenting time or some alternate ways, but I was wondering if there could be some push to get rid of the word visitation altogether and have it be something more substantial and warm and welcoming, and what your thoughts might be on that in future legislation.
Right. That actually is occurring already in legislation across the United States. A lot of states have removed the word visitation, and they're using parent contact, parent-child contact. Let me clarify. In some of the states we've written bills for, which are now more than half the United States, waiting our turn, either legislation sessions, timeout, or it's every other year, all that sort of stuff. But whatever they call it in that statute, I can't change. That's an entirely separate thing that usually the state bar family law section gets involved with. It says we don't want to call it visitation. Many states do not call it. They have removed the term visitation, and they call it parent-child contact, for example. In Wisconsin, it's called placement. So in those bills or those laws or those states, we do link the word placement as any in-person time, parent-child contact, and electronic communication. Where it's virtual parent time in Utah, it's any parent time with the child and any virtual parent time, right? So it's very clearly defined based on what that state does. We discussed that. If we change the term, we would double or triple the length of the bill. And we found that the only way the family law section will agree to remove a visitation is if they redo only that. And so a bill would have to be separate to address changing the word visitation, because none of us visit with our children. It's a much bigger, stronger, bond. It's unspoken. I don't even know if there's a word for it. But that does have to be treated separately. But do know that we don't interject the word visitation at all. We take whatever their term is, and we just associate electronic communication with it. Go ahead and continue the video.
Lost separated from your children by divorce? No sweat. Use the internet. So stand by. We're at large.
Reported. Well, when couples divorce, it's often the children who pay the highest price. But now some parents are turning to cyberspace for a new solution to an old problem that so many families face.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good. You're looking at the future of families where the parents are divorced.
Show me what you got there. What do you got there, Toby?
In an age where, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, half of all first marriages may split up, here's one way to help lessen the pain.
This is an incredibly positive opportunity to use technology to enhance children's lives.
It's called virtual visitation.
In its most basic form, it's people communicating with their children using the internet with a webcam.
Lee Rosen is a family law attorney in Raleigh, North Carolina, who recommends these family meetings in cyberspace to any parent who has gone through a divorce. It's something divorced father Michael Gough learned on his own.
And found out that my daughter's mother was relocating from Utah to another location, and I was looking for another way to communicate with my daughter from that long distance.
As seen in this demonstration, hundreds of miles may separate the children from their father, but the wonders of technology make it feel like no distance at all.
One day you see your children every day, the next day you see them a couple days a month, and so this really helps reduce that separation anxiety.
It would seem like a no-brainer that any divorced parent who wants the right to virtual visits with his or her children should get it as part of a divorce agreement. But as Michael Gough found out, it wasn't quite that easy.
I had to go through an immense amount of effort to prove to the court that this was a good, valuable, and easy tool.
To make it easier for other divorced parents in Utah, Gough helped push a state law where parents can request virtual visitation. In essence, the law says,
Judge, anytime you want to allow virtual visitation, you can.
Attorney Lee Rosen is helping to get such a bill passed in his state of North Carolina, while Wisconsin and Utah have already approved a statute. As it may sound,
we don't want to see virtual take the place of real children. It's a supplement, not a taking place of.
David Levy is Chief Executive Officer of the Children's Rights Council in Washington, D.C.
You can't hug a virtual reality. You can't take a virtual reality by the hand, walk that child to school.
But Michael Gough argues that virtual visitation is merely a supplement, not a replacement for in-person visits.
When you can see them.
And proponents like Lee Rosen insist that virtual visitation is one piece of technology that's needed to help ease the pain of a family split apart.
So it's powerful, it's effective, it's life-changing, and every child in America who is in a family where the parents are at a distance from them should have the opportunity to have access to this.
And if you would like to learn more about virtual visitations, just visit www.internetvisitation.org. And on that website, Geraldo, it will give people advice who are going through divorce. It also talks about the legislation that's being considered in 5 states right now.
You know, it's a great idea.
All right, so what we saw there is you actually got to see Windows Live Messenger having a video call, and even in the degraded form through the converted video, it's actually quite good. If you use Skype and you've ever experienced a high-res video, with a show of hands, if you show of hands, which means everybody I need here to clap, how many people here actually have used a webcam and done a video call with a family or friend? Okay, so a surprising amount, right? I've done presentations all across the U.S., and I've had sometimes only one or two hands show up. It's an amazing thing. So I think everybody in the room can understand that there is some value here. I heard a lot of hands. So one of the things, without a doubt, as you saw the children laughing, it really takes away what I consider to be that separation anxiety or that out of sight, out of mind. We all know, we've all probably, many of us in this room, experienced in between those in-person visits with our children, suddenly where they used to run up to us, they didn't. And I experienced that with my daughter. She did not run up to me only after 3 months of being separated with me. After I started using video calls, when I showed up in Milwaukee, I got an outburst, "Daddy," and she ran right up to me. And I can't agree with David Levy more. It is only a supplement. It is not a replacement. And I really wish people like himself and anybody who worries about the courts misusing it, referencing Lee and Clary cases, for example, realize that legislation's going to be the best option to improve this situation, not only for parental alienation cases, because once it becomes statutory and once it becomes case law, it can be used by psychologists, counselors to recommend it. Attorneys will be aware of it. When it's in the statute, the attorneys read it. I can tell you, I've had now there have been 8 attorneys involved in my divorce cases in 3 states. And I can tell you many of them, and obviously in my case because I'm on the forefront, but all of them, until clearly coming here to Texas, the statute passed before I moved here, had not known or had to read the statute to see what it said. So they still, because it's so thick and they have to memorize so many things, having it statutory really is going to address the concerns I believe that David Levy and others have, and it's why we try so hard.
Excuse me, Mike.
To make sure that wording's in there. Yes, question.
We have another question here.
Hello, Mike. Thank you for doing this. I can see the value, especially for parents who have absolutely no contact, to push to get at least this small form of contact on the way to getting more, contact as far as hands-on with their children. My concerning question is when we're talking about PAS cases and when there's such a severe manipulation by the alienating parent who is always watching every move of the child and very much in the background doing those whisperings when they're even on telephone conversations. Is there anything that you've proposed or are in the works of proposing for maybe a protected location for these children, to maybe a supervised visitation center where the residential parent is not present, but they're in a protected environment where they can have a safe call with their visiting parent or their other parent?
I actually have. I might as well talk about this in a second. We're going to cover it. But to answer your point, absolutely. There is as many people in this room probably know, there is a supervised visitation network in the United States. I believe it also exists in Canada. I have done, in their newsletter, there has been a story run on this subject that I wrote an article for. Also, the very first publicly available, free at cost, virtual visitation location is in DuPage County, Illinois. And I'm also working with Attorney Jeff Leving there in Illinois. He's involved in incarcerated parent programs of the state, and working with him as well to try to set up a system exactly like that where a family can go to a location, depending on who they're communicating with, if it's a prison or a jail or what have you, there may be a small cost associated with it. But in DuPage County, there is a father who lives in Texas, for example, who at home connects to this center. The mother takes the children to this center. It is a supervised visitation network location, and they have a private call. We set this up as a pilot specifically to prove that it works, to prove that it's inexpensive, and that these centers are capable of doing it. So we do have a pilot that's referenceable. Anybody who is involved with supervised visitation network locations, any county location, if you want to get involved in helping try to get more pilots, please, by all means, contact me on it. I believe this is a great option. One of the reasons we're doing this presentation is to outfit or discuss and encourage all counselors, psychologists, and everybody in this room who's involved with PAS cases For example, I'll have an example of a doctor who's using it for this purpose, to get up and running on it, to encourage, as Joe mentioned at the very beginning, to do remote communication with your clients further away. They don't have to necessarily go to downtown Toronto. They can be in Calgary and, watching a hockey game there and having a video call with Joe Goldberg in Toronto and getting some good PIS advice. And then by that, he can make a recommendation to the court where the child may live there in Toronto and encourage maybe coming to his office and having a video call or one of these centers or locations. But it is going to take some more time for these pilots to get out there, but we are definitely working on that.
Another question here, Joe. I should say Mike.
Hi, Mike. It's Bruce Toombs. I'm a family mediator. The term visitation, I can see both good and bad. If somebody's far away, when we write visitation into a separation agreement, there's financial cost to that. So if visitation becomes 60-40 or 50-50, the way one pays for child support is a lot different if they don't. But if they're locally, and I put, we always build in, can have phone calls, can have emails, that's not a problem. But if I wrote in visitation as part of just communication.
You would call it electronic communication is what you'd call it. And that includes, by definition, if you want to reference a statute in the U.S. or even just generic wording from one of our bills just to be generic, you would not, I'm using the word visitation as a generic word. I apologize for that, but you have to keep in mind I'm doing this subject all across the U.S., and visitation is the most recognized word, so I apologize. But it is always referred to as electronic communication, to completely separate it out. Another point is in the legislation we have, you can see this in the laws of Texas and Florida, virtual visitation or electronic communication cannot be used in the calculation of child support. So that has also been taken care of. So you won't cause more litigation by a parent who's using it quite often saying, I want my child support reduced. Statutory law in several states now says that's not what it was intended for. So I'll try to stop using the word visitation. Slide 8, please.
Any more questions from the audience?
And keep in mind, too, this does work locally. I lived only 30 minutes from my daughter when I moved to Wisconsin, and I used it every other Sunday that I did not have contact with my daughter, in-person contact. So I had my in-person contact Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then Wednesday, and then not that weekend, and that Sunday I would have a video call. So I would never go more than 3-4 days without having some sort of physical form of contact. Now, my daughter started calling me Michael. My daughter, like I said, didn't run up to me, and I believed parental alienation was well underway, hostile aggressive parenting was well underway, and in less than a year of using this solution, not only remotely from Utah to Wisconsin, my visits 3 or 4 times a year, but when I moved to Wisconsin, I completely undid the damage. My daughter's bond with me, grew back to what it was when we were all living in Utah. So I found it to be, a monumental improvement over telephone calls, for example. It definitely enhanced the relationship. It not only showed my daughter that I'm here for her, that I'm going out of my way for her, that I can show her her stuffed animals, but when our in-person time actually occurred, there was no learning. Her change in growth, her accidentally cutting her hair all off, all those subtle changes that children go through, there was no shock. I didn't have to relearn my daughter as I did before I started using the video calls. So another huge, important enhancement of the relationship. You can get on with your in-person time and your whole communication. You can hear about the friends on a regular basis. It really is an improvement. It is very easy. You saw an example on the Geraldo clip of what it looks like. We were hoping to do it on this conference, but the complexities and costs made it not realistic. It is inexpensive. So anybody in the audience who wants to do this, who wants to start doing this, contact me. Send me an email. I will tell you what you need. I'm going to give you the resources of where to go so you can read it, but I'll tell you what you need. I'll tell you where to go, what to buy. If you buy and do what I tell you, you will have a great experience, and I'll even do the initial test with you. The key here, too, is we talked about it from the last question, is virtual visitation can be recorded, right? So the lady who spoke in mediation cases, that's a great thing. I find it to be self-policing, not to mention historical value of just preserving the fact you had these video calls with your child, and when you do see them in person, you can show them to them. Oh, look at the great time we had. If they're being coerced, which is very clear in a video call, unlike you cannot see through the telephone, you can use software that will record what's on your image, on your screen. You can hear all the audio, and you can play this for a counselor or a psychologist or a court. So it's real important that you understand it's really easy to do. It's inexpensive. A webcam costs around $100, maybe a little more in Canada. It's continually improving. When I started this 6 years ago, I had to use two solutions, one for audio, one for video. Now there are almost 24 solutions. I still only recommend about 5 of them at all to be even considered.
Mike?
And it is way better than CNN satellite TV.
Excuse me,
Slide
Mike?
9. Yes.
I just wanted to ask a follow-up question. What's the difference, just in a quick amount of time, between using Skype or using Yahoo Messenger versus what you do, and are there advantages to the program that you have?
Okay, so I want to clarify what Joe said. Joe and I had some tests on this, and it is available still. I just kind of separated myself from this. Number one solution I'm going to recommend is Skype. Number two solution I'm going to recommend is Live Messenger. Live Messenger, Windows Live Messenger only works on Windows platforms. Skype is a Mac, Apple Macintosh, Apple iMac, whatever, MacBook, Windows compatible, so you can have any operating system you want, even Linux. SiteSpeed's another one. Okay, SiteSpeed has a premium offer for about $50 a year that lets you have up to 4 people in a video call. Skype and Live Messenger are one-on-one. The solution that Joe was mentioning earlier is web-based, meaning you can use any browser and have a video call with up to 16 people. Now, I don't recommend it because the pictures get really small. But if you needed to have a call with you, your children, there's 2, and maybe Joe Goldberg, for example, or a counselor or psychologist that needed to listen in or supervise, you could actually have a supervised virtual visitation video call, and all 3 people could be in 3 different locations because you're videoing in. Okay, so those solutions are what we're going to be using or discussing. I don't sell anything other than the Virtual Visitation Handbook on internetvisitation.net. That handbook is $10. You register. I had to do that because of the sheer demand and volume. It's getting bigger, and people can self-register. They pay for it. They download the handbook online. They can get updates for up to a year. I usually update it twice every year. It's currently on the 4th edition, 2009. There are free brochures. Real important that right now you don't have to register anything. You can go onto the website and download free brochures to print and give to your clients. There'll be a trifold. So you print them on double-sided paper and then fold them, boom, and you can hand them out. This information is completely free. If you want articles, internetvisitation.org is all about the legislative efforts and all the articles and news clips that have existed about it. internetvisitation.net is specific for the parenting and counselors to look at. So I used to have a link to this web-based video calls on my website, but between the developer changing things and constantly having to update the website, it was easier for me just to say, well, if your situation needs this solution, I can point you to it. And so you can contact me, and then based on your situation, we can do it. Slide 9, are we on slide 9? Here's some pictures, right? Here's a daughter playing games using Windows Live Messenger, playing checkers and playing music for her dad. Lee Rosen having a video call with his children, and there's me, my daughter and I, when she had cut all of her hair off, having a video call with the grandma and grandpa. So you can see by the sharpness in the pictures, they're really quite good. The one on the right is Live Messenger. Sorry, Skype one comes later. Slide 10. So it is video conferencing. That is its biggest scenario, but that doesn't mean you can't do video emails. I can send a video email to my daughter and just wish her a happy birthday. It's a link in an email, and or an embedded video within the email. If it's not too long, it won't be too big. So there is visual, and children, as psychologists will tell you, they are very visual in nature. This is their mechanism. So you as a parent may not understand this. Trust me, the kids do. This is their way of thinking. This is their way of absorbing this kind of contact. Instant messaging or text messaging on a cell phone, if you're in Europe, EMEA, or Asia-Pac countries, they have the ability of doing video calls over cell phones to a computer desktop or cell phone to cell phone. That will be coming in North America as they upgrade the systems from 3G to 4G, and you already see the phones have the ability. It's a matter of the network being able to support it. For example, when they turned it on in Australia for the first time, so many people used the video call option, it crashed the system. So they've learned from other countries that we have to do it right here. But it will allow a cell phone, like your child being at a ballpark, to be able to video call you on a desktop. Very, very cool stuff coming in the future. It is digital pictures. It is movies. It is things like Facebook. It is things like the websites that you post your photos to. Any of this is considered electronic communication. And also, it does not mean you have to use a computer. Slide 11, please. There are non-computer solutions. This has come up quite a bit in regards to the fear, uncertainty of doubt of, oh my gosh, he's going to break into my computer and blah, 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 blah. I'm sorry, but I'm the expert here. And there is absolutely no risk or fear. It is the use of the Internet, unrestricted by a child, that you should be the most concerned about. If you're using Skype, it doesn't answer itself on the other end. And even if you enabled that to do so, the parent in control of the webcam has the ability of unplugging that webcam when not in use. If they say, oh, he's going to look into my home anytime he wants, I'm sorry, but turn the webcam against the wall or out the window, or unplug it and put it in a drawer. So the ability of computer phobic, I know they're out there. I've had a guardian ad litem that just refused to use a computer. She felt they were evil. That was her term, actually. So the reality is there are non-computer solutions. Packet 8 is one of them. Grandstream, there's a service provider specifically. If anybody watches The Apprentice, The Celebrity Apprentice, Donald Trump used the ACN video phone to communicate, so that was an example. If you're familiar with Vonage or digital phone from your cable companies, it's your high-speed Internet connection. You have a box on each end which allows you to make voice-over IP calls, and then you just plug this telephone into your router as well, and it lets you have video. Each party on both ends must have one of these phones. These phones are about $200 a piece, and the service costs anywhere from $25 to $40 a month, and so much cheaper than buying computers. And no, they don't talk telephone to computer, they're telephone to telephone. The Grandstream phone, upper right-hand corner, the service that uses that, I have one of these phones. It's fantastic for those people I can't actually use it with, or services I can use it with, or tests. That can be set up to do a telephone to PC call. It's a little more complex. But the nice thing is you can plug that telephone into a television and have a big picture, or a big monitor. You can plug it in and have a bigger picture, so you're not limited to the tiny screen. And then the Motorola Ojo, if anybody's watched 24 with Kiefer Sutherland over the years, you have seen this little phone to the right be used in that series as well. Slide 12. So where is it used? If you want to talk to an actual psychologist and you are a doctor and counselor in this space, Dr. Catherine Kane, she is a PAWS counselor, PS counselor, and she does use this. I helped her get set up in Skype. So you could look her up in Skype and actually ask her what she thinks. She lives out in the country, so she uses it to communicate with her clients that are not close to her. So there's a reference of somebody there. Of course, anybody divorced or separated can use this. Incarcerated parents, like I mentioned with Jeff Leving's scenario, jails are using this more and more to get rid of the contraband issues. The Pennsylvania prison system uses this, where a family goes to a center, like was discussed earlier. They pay $15, and they can actually have a video call with an incarcerated parent. Hospitals are using it, and airports are using it. O'Hare, for example, and Chicago airport areas have hearing-impaired little stations. You go in there, and you can sign to somebody, and then they either sign back because it's somebody you know, or it goes through a service, usually a service for hearing-impaired, and they translate it for a telephone call. It's used extensively in education. So if people want to know what's being used where, Skype is being used all over educational facilities because it's inexpensive. Oprah uses Skype. And that Canadian comic Tom Green, he hosts his entire show and uses Skype to communicate with callers. So it's quite popular. Slide 13. Of course, who's it for? The children. We have to keep this in mind. It is for the children. We have a lot of issues with court. We have a lot of issues with wording interpretations and what are they going to do. I'm working on that. Others are working on that. And the more we do here, and those up in Canada want to get involved here and try to convince your parliament to pass something, I will be personally involved because I think it's important. Once we get to a critical mass with legislation, a lot of the questions and concerns in this room and those of like David Levy will go away because the courts will start becoming uniform in how they deal with this issue. Clearly, it's for the non-custodial parents or the parents that are affected, the alienated parents. Clearly, they benefit the most. But really, the children are who we're trying to improve the situation and options for. They're the ones that are being, kept from a parent. We know children need both parents. They need hugs and touches and encouragement from both parents. But in between those visits, especially when distance is involved, but even if you're across the city, you may live on the north side of Toronto and the other person lives down in Waterloo, you've got some distance to cover and you may not be able to do midweek visits, and so this is a tool. Non-grandparents, extended family members, high conflict relationships. Clearly, the reason this works is because it's recordable. If you see your child being coerced all the time with somebody holding up a popsicle out of the camera's view or whispering, that is obvious to a person viewing the video if either A, it's supervised, or B, it's recorded and played back. Slide 14. What it is not, and I 100% agree here with David Levy, it is not a replacement for in-person time. I will never support it for that. I will never encourage it for that, and it is my life's goal to make sure the courts don't do that by passing legislation. It is also not to justify a move away or relocation in divorce cases or separated parents locations. The legislation, again, says not to do that. So I am trying to address that, but move away, the reasons for that and legislation for that have to be dealt separately. All I can do is say, if you're deciding a case, don't take this into consideration when you make your decision. Judges have said to me, well, why do you think this is important, before they answer my question? And I say, because I'm smart enough to know that if you blurt it out, you're going to get a lot more fathers or non-custodial parents appealing cases. And their answer to me is, and that's exactly why we want the wording in there, because we don't want parents appealing because they've been virtualized. So even courts have realized appeals are happening because they're being virtualized, and they're really trying to focus on the move being granted, if it is being granted, for the reasons that may or may not be arguably valid. Okay, if we're going to change move-away situations, we have to pass reasonable legislation. We have to do it a little bit at a time. I would say the first thing you should do to legislate is put the burden of cost of all transportation and visits to the child's location on the moving parent. That should be the first piece of legislation to pass. It's easy to swallow. The parent will understand that that's a responsibility they're taking by moving, and it's easy for the courts to understand. If the state doesn't have that in the statute first, adding more is very difficult, and I've been quite involved with Wisconsin in this area. This move-away legislation is very difficult. Slide 15. So let's talk a little bit more about the benefits. Slide 16, please. Clearly, it dramatically reduces separation anxiety for both parents. I don't care if you're across town, if you're in a PAS case. This is a huge, huge point. I think every psychologist I ever spoke with, and I've spoken with a lot of them, Dr. Darnell, for example, there's Ken Waldron, they all say the same thing. This is clearly a great thing for the children. The cases I know that I've discussed with various counselors or psychologists say it's dramatic how fast the separation anxiety, or not only for the kid, but for the parent, I can speak for myself too, that it really does transfer very quickly if this happens on a regular basis. It can be used for children as young as 1 and 2. Initially in Utah, Utah separated their statutes in 3 categories. 5 to 18, pretty obvious, can do it. 3 to 5, and then 1 to 3. So we focused, because my daughter had them before, that we knew it worked at age 4. Once she knew how to start a call, she could initiate the calls, and did at age 4. So we knew in the 3 categories that statutes tend to focus, or the courts tend to focus on, no-brainer 3 to 18. Utah actually changed their legislation, because we did not include it in that section, and added it for the infants as well. It does require the other parent to be cooperative, right? So, or ordered to do so. And clearly, if you're not having video calls, you have to go to court and enforce that. And before anybody asks that question, no, there's nothing I can do, or we can legislate about enforcement. That's based on the facts and between the 2 parties in courts, unfortunately. And clearly, it allows you to see the changes. I talked about that. It makes children feel we're there, even though we can't be. It's a really good tool for reintroducing children back into a parent's life who's either been out of the country because of work and or alienated. Counselors and psychologists are really going to have to push this fact to get it used by the courts. And the courts are more likely to believe counselors and PAS specialists telling the courts to use it than they are us parents demanding it. Because I can tell you the judges still are clueless about this option. And I think even more important here in alienation cases, extended family can now play. Children can now see grandma and grandpa. So when you set yourself up, you go set up, make sure that grandma and grandpa get set up as well. Slide 17. Clearly, activities are, I think, pretty obvious, but show and tell, grades, artwork. You not only can just visit and goof around with your child, as I've done in many cases. My daughter learned how to type because of this. We were able to do homework. She was able to do her ABCs. I started this young enough when she was still trying to get her ABCs down. Reading books. I would visit with her in person. I'd fly there. I'd give her some books, and then I'd have her read those to me in video calls. So now I'm teaching my daughter how to read or helping encourage her how to read. I'm teaching her how to type. And as children play, social games, you can obviously play more complicated games, learning games. There's lots of them on the Internet. If you have a dual monitor system, you can have game on one, you can have video call on the other. You can have quite a robust experience, sing songs, music lessons, and things like that. And important, this can be used to reinforce rules for the other parent. We saw this on a video clip with 2.5 Men. The subject has made primetime TV with the CBS comedy. And, you saw Adam reinforcing a parenting decision the mom made that the child had to go to school because he thought he didn't feel well. But he did. He was just trying to get out of school. So it is a good tool for both parents. It does work both ways. Slide 18. And, of course, we've talked about this a lot. It's not a replacement for physical visitation. Excuse the word visitation. This is more given to family law sections where visitation is the predominant word. So visitation is generic, meaning in-person contact. Electronic communication has nothing to do with in-person contact. The laws and statutes are very clear that way, so my apologies for the term visitation. I don't like it either. Video conferencing is clearly better than the telephone because you can see, not just hear. And keep in mind, there's a cost savings. When you have voice over IP or you have your Internet connection, anything you do over that connection, you've already paid that monthly cost. Okay, so a voice over IP cost, I can talk to Canada all day long for free. I can talk to anywhere in the U.S. for free. I'm not incurring any additional charges. But I have to pay for that voice over IP. Now, if I use Skype or Live Messenger or SiteSpeed or one of the others that I particularly care for, or Uvu, what have you, that's free. I can talk all day over just the Internet connection. I don't need voice over IP. I just need my high-speed connection. I just need a computer, and it's free. So you're saving long-distance charges. It's no longer, well, it's going to cost me a fortune for an hour. No, it's free. An hour, a minute, a day. You can leave the connection up all night long if you wanted to. People are definitely too young to read or write can do it. Children are very dexter. They're sponges. They learn how to move a mouse. They learn how to double-click that button, and they're excited to do so. They're so eager to learn that, I can see Daddy by doing this, or I can see Mommy by doing this. I can tell you my ex-wife used it when our daughter was with us. So even when I traveled out of town on a wedding on 4th of July in Boston, we called her from the hotel room. Highly encourage both parties to cooperate here. And, of course, it can be used for ages 4 and 5 and younger. Slide 19. So, one of the people I've lived in Wisconsin for a while, so I had a nice long conversation with Dr. Ken Waldron. He wrote this article a while back, and this is a quote from his article. Virtual visitation might well be an improvement over the telephone as much as telephone contact is an improvement over letter writing in some ways. The sound of a voice on a telephone is a little closer to direct experience than reading a letter. Seeing a visual representation via computer while talking is closer still. So, it's been recognized. It's been discussed enough. We know that it's a good thing. Slide 20. Clearly, it can reduce the child's stress caused by move away. I consider move away any separation, whether it's out of the same house you both lived in, across town, across one side of Toronto to the other, or Toronto to Waterloo, Cambridge, what have you. Let's say the person's going to go up to Waterloo and work for RIM, and the other family lives in North Toronto. Clearly, that's a long way, okay? I consider anything where you can't get there in 5 to 10 minutes a move away, in my opinion. So that is something you now can do. You now can participate with homework. Oh, don't worry about it. I'll help them with a map. I'm good at math, you're not. I think it's really good for that. Pretty obviously, here's another statement made by the psychological effects of relocation for children. This was found in the AAML newsletter. Clearly, again, this can be used to help behavior. It's been recognized here. So the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers is important because they did do a model act on relocation. They are very involved in collaborative law and mediation. A point about mediation, I had video calls every other Sunday. My former wife hated me doing it so much, probably more because of my press and the fact that I managed to get it when it shouldn't have been given, that I traded her virtual time for real time. When I moved to Wisconsin, I did not see my daughter on Monday. When I traded her, because she so did not want to do it, and I had a guardian ad litem that so did not want me to do it, and I wouldn't back down the issue because I'd just gotten a law passed, so now that was statutory. I traded that time, at that hour or less, twice a month video call for every Monday in-person time, after school to 8 o'clock at night. To me, that's huge. That's something I never considered it for. So mediators, I think this is a great tool to mediate more in-person time. And parents, if you're out there in the audience as well. And clearly one of the things I know that most children I've spoke with that have been separated, I've talked to teenagers, young tweens as well, that clearly their first reaction is, I feel abandoned by the other parent. They start blaming themselves. I think we all know what the situations are here. But we find that this has definitely been minimized in the cases that we have talked to people and the children we've interviewed saying, oh, well, I know it's a big, long distance, and I kind of blame myself, but I saw my dad was happy, I saw my mom was happy, and I was able to keep some touch in it. And, I've experienced it myself. My daughter and I have a great relationship. Huge improvement here as far as reducing abandonment, which is clearly a PAS issue. Slide 21, please. Now, here we're on the big one, right? So broken relationships, high-conflict families, PAS cases, hostile aggressive parenting. Kimberly Sheff, who also lives in Illinois, I've had some extensive conversations with her. She wrote this when she was in law school and did the investigation. Clearly, this is a tool to help reestablish broken relationships. And this is what this conference is all about, is learning this information. This is how virtual visitation can really help in your cases. I don't know what else to say here, but I think very highly of this, and I believe Joel Goldberg, and the main reason why we're here today, is to share this information with you. Slide 22. So number 6, pretty obvious, a way to reintroduce or expand contact. Now, I know you've got to fight it in court. I can't address that other than use the examples of legislation that already exists in the United States, or help me get it there in Toronto. When and if there's a hearing in Toronto on this subject, I will be there personally to back it. Okay, that's my promise to you Canadians up there, eh? So, I feel very strongly that if we can get this not only in the United States, but I have this in case law in South America, in South Africa. I've had many attorneys in EMEA, in UK, Canada, as well as Australia, contact me on this, and I provided information to them. Attorneys have sent me saying, thank you, I now have something I never had before. The court agreed. It's crucial to get this legislation involved. And this is also another one. If I can educate everybody here, they can tell their counselors, and this can become a normal subject for the PAS newsletters and promotion that's saying, this is really a tool, and the counselors start using it so they can help more people that live further away, then it will grow. It's the grassroots grow effort that I'll see happen here. It's practical because it is so inexpensive. The statistics show that 70% of households in the United States, Pew Internet does all our statistics here in the U.S., and so Canada, I'm sure, is almost identical, but over 70% of the households in the United States have computers. Of those that are connected to the Internet, over 75% are on high speed. So we're talking the vast majority of people. The computers of 5 years ago might have struggled on a video call, but anything Pentium 4 or dual core or newer in the last 3 years is very adequate for a video call. And even now, to buy a brand new computer at Walmart, everything in a box for $300-400 is everything you need to have a video call. So if you really need a computer upgrade, I can tell you, don't go and bitch about the cost and tell them they have to buy it. Attorney fees times 2. It's far cheaper for you just to buy a brand new box and go into court or the counselor and say, here, this is for them. Here's the webcam. Here's the computer. It's free. I just want you to start using it. You'll save tons in attorney fees. I'll tell you that right now. And clearly, long-distance calls are free. Page 23. I highly recommend you email photos back. We probably already do this on a regular basis. You can do movies. If you've used Facebook, what have you, you understand that concept. Be careful of personal information. That means anything that's your full name, the actual city where you live. So I'm in Austin, Texas. Not actually. I live in a suburb called Round Rock. But I would never post anything other than my name and that I live in Austin, Texas. So I would not put my phone number out there. I would not put my credit card number, obviously. I would not put my Social Security number. I would not put my address. I would not put my daughter's school name. I would not put the district she's in. So literally, anybody looking at this couldn't find me personally. I'll obviously be enlisted in the phone book. And obviously, clearly, a big one here, holidays. I have opened Christmas presents virtually with my daughter when it was not my year to have her. So I can still participate on years that I'm not around or in a different state or, sharing situation. Slide 24. So clearly, these are the things you can do, right? You can show pets. My daughter, we had a cat of 21 years. Okay, I had a cat that I got when I was 25 years old, or 24 years old, and it just passed away here last year. My daughter knew the cat very well, so I was able to share that with her. When I moved, I was able to share views. I traveled all over the world for my computer security work, and she's seen the shores of Maui, the Australia beaches, Australia downtown Sydney, Melbourne. She's seen France. She's seen Ireland. She's seen London. She's even seen Waterloo and Toronto and Cambridge, all because I'm sharing my experience and trying to make her understand what I do for a living and all that. My grandparents clearly get to see very subtle contact. She just had a video call with my parents. She's about to get a haircut, now have bangs, and my parents will get to see that again. And again, when we see her in person at our family wedding that's coming up here in a couple months, my parents, her grandparents, won't be so shocked. Slide 25, please. So let's touch on the concerns about virtual visitation. I think David Levy definitely discussed one of them, and that is, hey, well, the courts, and it came up here as well, and when your people here brought it up, it's a very important point, is clearly the courts can misuse it. And I can't say enough. If we do nothing and we just let the courts do whatever they want, you're right, it's going to be misused. But if we actually get legislation in place, if we actually modify case law, we don't necessarily need legislation as we really need it, but if we can't have legislation, it's important to set good case law. Good case law set by people like in this room who are going to make recommendations to the court to use this solution. You're going to prove it to them, or the counselor is going to make a recommendation, or the PAS specialist is going to make a recommendation, and it's going to start getting into the records. And once that happens, now the people that are struggling won't have to struggle so much harder. And that was my goal when I started this process. So now anybody in Utah, Wisconsin, Texas, or any other state that has a pre-draft bill that I've put out there can use that in court. And I have gotten emails that said, man, just having that pre-draft bill for the judge to look at, because it was in his own statutory terms and it was in his own numbers, he was able to understand what I was asking for, and it was granted. So I think it really is important we do something rather than nothing. So clearly, concerns are the breakdown, right? What happens if the court orders a parent can't have midweek contact because they can be virtualized? I know it's happened. I've read the case law. I've read judges' comments, but I do believe it's a minority. And I think the only answer here to address David Levy's comments and those of some people in this room, as well as the obvious knowing that it's going to happen, judges are going to do whatever the hell they want, that we've got to legislate. We really do. Move away as well. The American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, the AAML, is an endorser of this. They love it for mediation reasons. They love it for collaborative law, but they also love it because it's an option they can use. And so I expect as they change their Model Relocation Act or edit or update their Model Relocation Act, virtual visitation is going to find its way in there, and it's going to specify, because I've had extensive conversations with the former president, that this is what I'm going to push for anyway, and I'm pretty sure they agree with this point, is that it should not be considered in relocation cases. And a lot of judges use that Model Act to decide what they're going to decide the case on. And obviously, other normal criteria granting a relocation varies not only by country but by state. Some states have criteria, how many miles, who's going to pay. Utah has a pay restriction. The moving parent may be required to pay for all expenses. So that's going to change and vary. But those are the concerns, without a doubt. I share them. I believe they will happen if we don't do anything, and that's what we're here to do legislatively. That's the only way I believe we can address this, and case law, just by sheer experience. So the other big one is, what have you heard in regards to this question always comes up. What have you heard in regards to the issues I've got to be ready for to answer when a parent doesn't want to do it? Security. I'm afraid that I'm going to get a virus. Okay, then buy an internet security suite. Okay, buy a little Linksys firewall. We're going to see a picture of that in a minute. Buy your anti-spy, whatever. It's just fear. It's not reality. Okay, 1/10 of 1% of the people in the world have any clue of how to actually hack. Okay, a parent who's just trying to have contact, you really think they're gonna go out of their way to try to do that to interfere with the contact? No, this is just a ploy, and so you got to be ready by this ploy by saying, hey, I'll provide the $50 software internet security suite, or if it gets really bad, you do what I mentioned earlier and use video telephones. I'm sorry, but I don't need to touch your computer. I'll provide you a video telephone. You already have a high-speed internet connection. I'll pay for the service, or you'll pay for the service because it also gives you long distance for free, and we're done.
Excuse me, Mike, can you take a breath for a second?
I can.
I got someone here who wants to make a comment. Okay.
Shoot.
Mike, I don't have a question.
Talk right closer.
Yeah. Mike, I don't have a question. I have a comment.
Okay.
Your view of this is great. I'm with it. My concerns have been dissipated, except for one. Okay. If you are going to change legislation that will allow this virtual parenting or virtual contact, I would like to suggest that the concern of this not replacing contact or access to the children be specified in the law itself.
It is. In all the states that this law exists, those words are in there. This is not a replacement. It is only a supplement to in-person contact. It is part of the law.
That was my concern, because without that, it would probably
I agree with you completely.
It would get
it's
diluted.
in there.
Yes. Well, thank you. You addressed my concern. Thank you.
So, real important point here. A while back, the guy's name was Justin. He became famous, made the big tour of the morning shows. He basically was an 18-year-old at the time, 14 when this started, 18 when he finally came out and did all this stuff and tried to bring these people to justice. But he got involved with child pornography. He got suckered in. He was on the Internet. And, the Today Show did this. Oprah called it. The webcams his attorney called webcams as being evil. And he got a lot of flack for that. And on the Today Show, he said, well, it's not so much that the webcam obviously provides the picture piece, but it's the parents who did not monitor what this child's doing. That is the true and only fear here. So that doesn't mean you got to put your computer in the living room, and that's why the other parent's going to oppose it. You can put the computer in the child's room, and we're going to talk about that solution right here. But there are software you can put on the child's computer. You'll know everything they text message, everything they instant message, every website they go to. You can have it email you automatically, and it's done so without the child knowing. So there are ways to monitor, but that is absolutely the number one concern that you should be aware of, is it's unrestricted access the child has that the parent really doesn't know what's going on. That's what gets the child in trouble. If you're watching and you're seeing the logs and the child goes to Playboy.com and you say, hey, you can't go to this website, or you don't implement a solution to block these inappropriate websites, that's how your child's going to get involved with bad stuff. It is not because of any of the parents in this room. It's not because of an alienating parent, unless, of course, that's what they say. Hey, I'm afraid the child's going to do just about anything. I don't like computers, blah, 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 blah. That's not the reality. Solutions are in place. There's lots of software you can buy. D-Link makes a little tiny box for about $75 US. It has all the filtering on there, and I can block anything or everything and only allow what I want my daughter to visit. So I can block this risk of any kind of predator or bad things happening if I'm not sitting right next to her while the computer is being used. So that is definitely a big concern you need to address and be prepared for it. But again, we are talking this is far cheaper you buying this solution and recommending this solution than it is for you to try to argue them paying for it. So clearly, parents new to the house, no. Unplug the webcam. Just make sure you plug it in before you start the solution next time. Turn it into the back of the wall. Make sure the setup of the desk is slightly angled, the webcam slightly angled so it faces the wall, so really it doesn't face into the home in the event that the computer's in the living room. This is completely in the control of the parent who has the child who's complaining. This is not a real argument. Page 27. Again, I've heard a lot of, I'm not computer literate, it's too complicated. I'm sorry. Pew Internet says everybody under 40 is computer literate. Anybody who's not computer literate under 40, well, that's pretty much a minority. That's the reality. How much is it? Webcam costs $100. If you buy everything, like I said, everything in a box, the webcam and a headset, you're looking at maybe $600. $600, U.S., maybe even Canada. High-speed internet connections nowadays cost anywhere from $20 to $45 a month, depending on where you get. DSL will work just fine. Satellite does not. Do not use dial-up. Do not use satellite. That will not work for you. Articles. Real important that you know where to find resources or information. InternetVisitation.org is where the complete list of articles are. You can find all the legal journal articles there. You can see all the news clips, even the two we showed here. You can see all the newspaper clips of the stories that have gone around. There is so much information there that if you took this to court, including a judge's trends article, there is everything you might need to convince a court that this is a good thing to use.
Excuse me, Mike, we got another question here?
Yes.
You just said that anybody under 40 would have no problems with this. I'm over 60.
Yeah. My dad uses it. He's 75 now. But yes, it is very easy. Okay, I'm using the cutoff that Pew Internet says is considered computer literate. But, again, the minority is, and I would think you fit into the area of, older counselors and older psychologists and judges and older attorneys. And I can tell you attorneys in the courts are the worst computer literate people I've ever met. I've done a lot of lobby firm. I've done a lot of work with attorneys. I've had 8 of them involved in my divorce for the last 6 years. They're terrible in regards to computer literacy. But I can tell you they've all been doing it because I've kind of shoved it down their throat. And, once you just learn those couple clicks of the mouse and launch the software, it's really quite easy. It's not a complicated thing to do. This is probably one of the easiest things. And it really, the analogy of if you can do email, you can do virtual visitation because email is a little more complicated. There's a lot of options in Outlook or Outlook Express or even Gmail. Unless you're just reading, creating, that's all it is. You start the program, you see the contact, once you figure out who they are, you enter them. Once the contact's entered, you double-click it, it calls them. You start your camera. You start talking and you start seeing. Really just like creating an email. Simple.
Excuse me, Mike?
Yes.
I just have to ask you, I've just been told by the organizers here that because of time, we need to rush things along, and if you could maybe limit
almost done.
To about 5 minutes at the most.
Yep. Slide 29. So I've talked about this Judge's Trend article. It's available on that website. It specifically talks about supervised visits as well. So I highly recommend, if anybody wants to read this article, focus on the legal publications at internetvisitation.org. Slide 30. Again, we talked about this earlier. The question came up, is there anywhere that does this as a center? Yes. DuPage County, Illinois, the family center there, is the very first supervised visitation network location to offer virtual visitation. And anybody else who wants me to help them get it set up somewhere else, you get the contacts going, I'll help convince. Slide 31. Here's an example of a judge in Philadelphia. You saw another judge on the news clip using this. Again, I want to encourage this intercommunication. He even admits it does not replace a hug. So, even judges are speaking out about this now. And jails are using it. Slide 31. Slide 32, please. And here's the current laws. Currently, you can find these on internetvisitation.org, and we have a whole bunch of bills. Slide 33. a whole bunch of bills that are in the works. We've had legislators die on us. We've had them be voted out. And so it takes time, and a presidential election year complicates things. So it's probably looks slow to some people. But North Carolina is going to be giving us a pre-draft bill any day now for us to submit to this session. So that's a good thing. So we're definitely still active. In this presentation, if you do want a copy of it, slide 34 and on, if you just kind of wing down maybe 4 to slide 36, 37, you can just go through those kind of quickly. Don't have to talk about them. But you'll see pictures of stuff that's out there. It talks about the costs through page 43. You can see a copy of Norton Internet Security. The link says router. This is how you split one connection into multiples for your home. So you can plug in a video phone, for example, or a voice over IP. All this is in the presentation. Slide 44 talks about the parenting control software. So anybody who wants this information, please send it to, let me know by email. I'll send you a copy of it or post the link on the website. I won't post it on the website. It's not publicly available, but I will send it to you in an email so you can download the presentation in its entirety. It's real important in that aspect. Another point, scheduling. I use a software called Custody Exchange. How do I schedule this so that I can just email the schedule to another party? There's a lot of options here. You can use Google Calendar, you can use Yahoo Calendar, set up a generic account, put all the visitation in there, and then both parties can log in and look at this account. There's also softwares, but this is very complicated, so I'm going to say if you really have a need to do scheduling, contact me. If you want a recommendation on what to use, contact me. Look at the Virtual Visitation Handbook online at internetvisitation.net. $10, $9.95. It gets you access to that, and you can get everything you need answered in that about 30-page brochure. With that, I'll take questions.
Is there anybody with any last-minute questions? If not, we've got one gentleman here that's got a question here.
You put up slide 45, you can see my base recommendations, by the way. Slide 45.
Hi, I'm Brad Palmer. Two short questions. One was, you said that the custodian parent or the non-custodian parent will feel that way. Seems like it's a lot about the parents. What about how the kids feel that you are probably using them and dad's playing golf and going out and doing that and enjoying that while he or she is stuck in the house and saying hello to you?
Well, everybody I've talked to and the kids that have done some news clips and things, and my own daughter, and I don't see that, because remember, we're not talking hours here. These calls last. I have had calls last as long as an hour and a half with my daughter. And you're only doing it once or twice a week. They're going to wonder why you're not around, without a doubt, but this doubt is clearly there without the call, and when you start using the call, I hope to see you soon, and you can start planning it, and then once you finally do plan it, or you get the assistance of being supervised or whatever the situation may be, you can reinforce that I'm coming in 3 weeks or 2 weeks and 1 week, and then it builds an excitement. And so, it varies, I guess, per case.
Well, thank you, Mike. I think everybody's got their questions answered here. We're going to pass out flyers. We understand that you're going to have you're working on a new project. It's called a transporter device where you can beam your kids over to your houses. So we're letting everybody know. Anyways, thank you very much. I'll pass you back to Joe here.
Right. Thank you very much.
Please send me an email with any comments or questions. I help, by the way. I do not charge for my services. The only charges involved is downloading that handbook to pay for the website it's hosted on, because I get so many requests for it. But other than that, if you need recommendations or you want to do a video call test, I do that for free. It's important for me to get people like you educated and start using it so that everybody understands its importance and value.
Thank you very much. Well, it's been a pretty intense, pretty long marathon 3 days. At least that's my sense of it. I haven't been outside since Thursday. It's cleared up and started raining again, I'm told, but I wouldn't. It's not okay. It got sunny again. I'm anticipating a little burst of separation anxiety when this is over, because this has become my reality for the last 3 days. But I want to take a moment to I think we all do, to express our appreciation to the founder of the this symposium, Mr. Joe Goldberg, and I think you know, since I've been doing this stuff, and I'll shut up in a minute, I promise. Since I've been doing this stuff, this is only the third meeting that's focused specifically on the problem of alienation. And that's been a long time just to have 3 meetings. So I hope the next one, Joe, doesn't have to wait as long as we did since the last one. So thank you very much. Here is the founder, Joe Goldberg.